All right, in this video, I will cover some things that are super important. And of course, the key to any language, I think, is being able to conjugate the verbs. Much of a language revolves around verbs, action words. Things that you do, things, I do this, I say that, I did this, I said that. We're always speaking in verbs, okay? And so you need to know how to conjugate them. Don't get intimidated by this page. It's okay. There's a lot of information on it, but these are things that we'll take one at a time as we go throughout our future studies as well. But let's start at the top there. It says for regular, there's regular verbs and irregular verbs. And this table applies to regular verbs. Most of the verbs in Portuguese are what we call regular. They follow the basic pattern or the basic rules of this table. The irregular verbs might have some variation in how they're conjugated. And so it just so happens that some of the most used verbs in Portuguese are irregular verbs. And so you just have to memorize those conjugation endings. You just have to know them. But it's okay. It can be done, all right? And there aren't a ton of irregular verbs. There's some, but most of them are regular, okay? Which means they follow this pattern. These endings is basically a rule of thumb. And so once you learn the endings, the conjugations to the different AR, ER, IR verbs, you got it. You can say what you want to say. So for regular AR, ER, and IR verbs, they're at the top. Here are the conjugation endings in the 6 tenses. I basically look at it this way. If you know these 6 tenses, you can pretty much say just about anything you want to say in Portuguese. Yes, there are a couple other tenses or ways of saying things that you probably will want to know, and you will learn them. But if you know how to say or conjugate in these 6 tenses, you got it. Like, you can say what you want to say. And the 6 tenses are the present, what's happening now, the preterit or preterito perfeito, which is a form of the past tense. And I say a form because in English we have one form of the past. It happened in the past, it's done, right? In Portuguese there are 2 forms of the past. The preterit and then the imperfect, o preterito imperfeito, which is also the past tense, but something that used to happen. It's something that, and I'll explain that in a second, but something that doesn't necessarily have a specific starting and ending time. It's just something you used to do all the time, type thing. Okay. Then the present subjunctive, the past subjunctive, and the future subjunctive. All right, I'll go over those in just a minute. Now, remember, next line up at the top, remember when you conjugate a verb, you drop the AR, ER, or IR from the end of the unconjugated, what we call infinitive or whole verb, and add the endings you see below according to the tense in which the verb is used. In Portuguese, you mainly have 3 types of verbs, AR, ER, and IR, which is how the different verbs end. There are also a handful of verbs that end in OR, and we're not going to worry about those today. There's a few of them, and what's cool about that is once you learn how to conjugate one of them, you know how to conjugate all of them. Okay, they follow the same pattern as well. So, but AR verbs, ER verbs, and IR verbs. Now, I wrote there, note the 3rd line at the top. For irregular verbs, the conjugation endings can be different and don't always follow these standards on this page, which is fine. That's just, like I said, it's something you have to memorize, and you will. All right, so real quick, the present. Let's look at the conjugation table. You can see the row, AR, ER, IR verbs, and then the present tense. Present is something that's happening now. I run, I speak, I eat. So you can see the verb endings. Remember, drop the AR, the ER, or the IR, and you add those endings. For if you're talking about eu, I, you drop the AR and add an O. Drop the ER and add an O. Drop the IR and add an O. Pretty simple, right? If it's a you're talking about ele, ela, or você, he, she, or you drop the AR, ER, IR, and you add the A for AR or the E for ER and IR verbs. If you're talking about nós, we, you can see you drop the AR, ER, IR, and add, I'm going across here, the amos, amos, or imos. And then for eles, elas, and vocês, they, or you guys, you drop the ending of the verb, the unconjugated verb, and you can see what you add there. For AR verbs, you add an AM, ER, and IR verbs, and EM. And again, this rule applies to all the regular verbs, which are most of the verbs in Portuguese. So you don't have to wonder how to conjugate if you know this rule. If you know the endings and you memorize this table, you got it. Okay. And so I'm not going to go over each individual thing here, but you can see the preterit. Okay, again, just drop the last two letters of the unconjugated verb, the AR, the ER, or IR, and you add these endings. Okay, so the preterit, I will say this, the preterit is like, it's the preterit and the imperfect are both past tenses. The preterit is like a snapshot, a photograph. It's something that happened. It had a set start time, a set end time. It's something that I did, you did, we did, they did, and it's over, okay? It's done. It was like a one-time thing, and there you go. The imperfect, the third one down, is something, it's the past, but it's almost like a video, okay, a movie, where it's something that used to happen, or there's not necessarily a set starting and ending time. It's a little more fluid, something that, you know, I did all the time in the past, something that happened all the time in the past, okay? And that's just something you learn as you get a feel for the language. The present, past, and future subjunctives, and we'll cover each of these in more detail, okay, on other videos. But basically, when it says subjunctive, it means something that may happen. And if it's in the present, you know, I want you to do this. You may or may not do this, but I want you to do this. It may happen. Okay? And there are certain trigger words, certain trigger verbs that we'll learn for the subjunctive. I want, I desire, I need, you know, that you do, or he does, or she does, or we do a certain thing. Okay? So you'll understand that more as we go, but the present subjunctive, if it may happen and it's in the present, it's present subjunctive. Past subjunctive, I wanted you to do something. I needed you to do something. It was important that you do something. That's the past subjunctive, because it may or may not have happened. And the future subjunctive is something that may or may not happen in the future. All right? If you do this, then I will be happy. All right? If you do this, and type thing. So it may or may not happen in the future. That's future subjunctive. So we will go over the different these individual tenses in future videos. But this is an overview. I suggest that you memorize this table, and to help you do that, refer to this video often. Write these down. Have a copy of them. You know, have maybe a little note card with you all the time when you're trying to speak. So you go, okay, well, if it's whatever tense it is, I know if it's a regular verb, I know the conjugation ending. I got it right here. So once you learn this, like I said, you got it. You can say just about anything you want. All right? Agora é sua vez.